one of the hardest truths that I ever had to face about myself and about my life was that I was manipulated because I was an easy target and I allowed them to do what they did to me.
So I'm sitting in therapy and I realize that very few people are actually incapable of not manipulating others for their own sake and their own personal gain. And after much reflection, a little bit of sadness and slight depression, and study, of course, right? It turns out that actually the one mental shift that I certainly needed, and you might need too, is on the other side of this episode.
Hey everybody, it's Bianca.
Welcome back, Evolvers. It's Emilia. So if you have ever been manipulated before, this episode is about to crack open and bust open what that might have been like for you.
We've all been manipulated. We've all been manipulated.
Yeah,
Can we
have
hold on? Start with that premise. We are starting with that premise. Every single one of us has been manipulated at least once. And I think the more cynical or the more sinister thing is that so many of us, to your point, have been manipulated by people who had no idea that's even what they were doing.
Yeah. And that's something that really broke through hard and strong and fast. And I don't know if I had the emotional scaffolding to kind of handle it. So like I mentioned in the very opener, slightly depressing when I did realize this in therapy. But like, let's just, have a shared definition, right? Manipulation, because I hear two situations where manipulation is mentioned be. Number one is in scientific labs. So like a manipulation of one variable. So let's say you're testing, some stem cells in a petri dish, and you're over time of a study as a scientist, you're manipulating the temperature in the room, i.e. turning it up or turning it down, to see if that petri dish helps to encourage stem cell growth or discourage it, right? In the lab, that is where manipulation can be shared. The other thing, and that's not what we're talking about in this episode, the other element of manipulation, and this is what we're talking about in this episode, is using actual tactics, psychological tactics, and specifically in an interpersonal and interrelationship dynamic where you're influencing control or influence in a manner over someone, usually unfairly and dishonestly, or omitting what your intention is for one's own benefit, not both people's benefit or not all people's benefit, but for you as the manipulator, your benefit, right? And so the manipulatee is the person who's being manipulated. And that's why when we open this way, we have all been the manipulatee, but ironically, we also more than likely have unconsciously manipulated someone else too. And so no shame in that game if it was unconscious.
I've done
it too.
100%.
Whew, man. And when we just take a step back and just acknowledge that, I think that it depressurizes this conversation, because something as small and as innocent as you getting your needs met, we don't necessarily know and are taught skills to do so in a way that puts that intention, puts that in the forefront for everyone to see. And I'll give a tiny little example. When I was, I want to say 12 years old, I remember I was so pissed off. It was probably around that time period. I was so pissed off. So I have a younger sister, and back then I was her idol and I didn't know that. So I had a lot of influence over her in a way that if I were to say, go do X, there was a lot less questioning that would happen. And younger version of me had a need to have a sense of autonomy and individuality. And so I would get super pissed off when she would go in my closet and she would take my clothes and she would try to model herself after me. She would wear some of my clothes. She would take, at the time, my hair straightener, and she would use it without asking. And I just really would get upset so deeply. And I didn't have the skill sets to emotionally regulate and share that with her in a way that helped her to honor the boundaries that I would try to set. And it didn't really help that my parents really didn't know how to communicate or work with those confrontations and conflict that we would have as sisters getting into fights over a straightener, because in their minds it's like, it's a straightener, you both have hair, you're going to use it, you can't expect that boundary to be respected, right? So, you know, in certain situations, one in particular, I had essentially hid my straightener from her, and, you know, without actually telling her outrightly those boundaries, I manipulated her to try to get my need for autonomy and try to get my boundaries met. I needed her to respect my boundaries. I needed her to honor what it was that I wanted, i.e., this is my stuff and I want you to ask before you use it. And by hiding it from her, I was manipulating a situation where it wasn't fair to her, because not only did I manipulate the way in which that situation unfolded, but I also lied to her, and that, like, I didn't know where that straightener was and all that stuff. So manipulation
Straight
can
up
be
gaslit her.
yeah. So manipulation can be a very seemingly insignificant situation where you're trying to get your needs met and you don't know how to, and you're trying to influence a situation to do so, only for your needs to be met. And that can be small and insignificant. Like I said, it can go and be a very slippery slope, though. And if we're not all checking ourselves, man, we can not only be the manipulators of people that we love and care deeply about, but we can also get really freaking manipulated without even realizing it.
When you make someone else feel bad for not doing what you want them to do, that's manipulation. When you're trying to, I'm going to say this, people aren't going to like this, people pleasing is a form of manipulation. You're not doing it intentionally.
Yeah.
But when I was a people pleaser, it was a manipulation tactic. It wasn't out of malice. It was me trying to get my need met, but I didn't know that that's what I was doing. I'm going to alter the way that I am, the way that I present myself, and the way that I am going to show up in this situation so that you give me love. That is manipulation, because you're not actually acting authentically. You're not actually asking for your needs to be met. You're saying, what can I do to get my need met? That is manipulation. Or how many of us have had a family member that have guilt tripped the living fucking shit out of us, saying, oh, you just don't like spending time with us anymore. What did we do to you? We were just such bad parents to you. You know, you never want to come see us anymore. And it's like, or you could say that you miss me and that you feel sad that I don't come around anymore and that you would like to see me. I was on the phone with a client yesterday where her parents literally did exactly that. Oh, you just don't ever want to see us anymore. Your siblings are the good ones because they still want to come see us. It's like,
Woof.
I wonder why they don't want to come see you when they're guilt tripped into coming. And then when they do come, you just shit on their life about all the things that they don't do or the things that they do incorrectly. More of us than we want to admit have been on both ends of the spectrum. And thankfully, for a lot of us, it hasn't been in extreme situations. But unfortunately, for some of us and a lot of us, it has been more covert, harmful, destructive, tactical, thought out manipulation. One of the first relationships that I was in, actually the first relationship that I was in, he did this all the time. He would threaten to complete suicide in order to make me stay. He blackmailed me so I wouldn't leave. He threatened to hurt me and he threatened to harm my family because he didn't want me to leave the relationship. And because he was a very mentally unwell human. We've all, or many of us have been in those extreme situations. And I alluded to this in the last episode, and this is going to sound really harsh, but I only say it because I've experienced it. I allowed myself to get into a situation like that. And a lot of us, not all of us, but a lot of us who are manipulated, it's because we are not viewed as strong or capable or competent, and so we're an easy target. And because we're an easy target, we make ourselves more susceptible to people who want to do harm. It's the dark, ugly truth about the world that there are people out there who will do that. And I was naive and I didn't think that people did things like that. And that's why I got hurt.
My name is Mandy, and I'm here to chat with you about group coaching with Evolve Ventures. I signed up for group coaching because I was looking to connect with other people who were going through similar struggles that I was. It was really nice to see that I was not the only person feeling the way I felt. Having the thoughts that I was having or having the same struggles, it was really empowering to be able to connect to other people, share our journeys, kind of just grow together from, and all of us are coming from so many different walks of life, and that's really what I think made group coaching such an amazing experience for me, because I definitely learn through stories and experiences, so getting to hear other people's perspectives and their experiences definitely helped me grow. Highly, highly recommend group coaching. It was so good.
So I have a client right now that's coming to mind, actually a couple of them and a couple experiences, but I was, to what I had said a little bit earlier in this episode, I was in a therapy call and, I'm very proactive with my mental health. And that's something that I'm really proud that you and I both are, and because we practice, I don't want to say what we preach because we're not preaching, right? We practice what we are sharing. And we do so from a proactive standpoint to minimize the reactivity of poor mental health, right? And the crises that life throws our way. And I was on a therapy call a couple months ago, and I was navigating through I call a shame gremlin, which is like when you have a shame or a memory that is wrapped in shame and it's been like eating at your soul. That's kind of what I call a shame gremlin. And it was something on my experience that I had shame around, just in the way in which I navigated life. And I was sitting in that therapy chair, hearing from my therapist, like, like the way in which you responded in that situation, she didn't say you shouldn't have shame around this, but like it makes sense why shame is present, because shame has been teaching you to keep silent about the manipulation that you actually experienced in that interpersonal dynamic. And I'm like, wait, what? And she's like, how, you're very educated, you're well aware of so many different human psychology components and how the neuroscience works and whatnot. I'm like, yeah, where are you going with this? And she's like, well, honestly, like, here's a big word that might be really helpful for you to really understand, is that not everyone has the capacity not to manipulate people like you. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, how human beings, yeah. She goes, how people have needs? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And she's like, not everyone has the capacity to meet those needs. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, so I want you to think about that. So I'm like, all right, let me think about this. And it spun off a whole diatribe of research that I did that has really wrapped my head around, why is it that I have all these stupid freaking shame gremlins around how I showed up in these interpersonal dynamics? Not because I was the manipulator, but because I was manipulated, and how I responded to that manipulation had me like in such an out of alignment, out of integrity type behaviors, because I didn't protect myself. And more often than not, it was that moment of like, oh my goodness, I tried to squeeze out of the situation and not necessarily the best way for me. But in looking back in retrospect, it was because I was being manipulated. Because number one, I had this core belief about the world, which is what I find very, very similar in all people that have been manipulated is to what you just alluded to right there, B. Core belief about the world, right? We have core beliefs about ourselves, other people, and the world. And my core belief about the world was that the world is good. There are no evil people, right? So my belief about others is that all people are good. There are no evil people in this world. Those two beliefs, one belief about the world and one belief about others, that wrapped my frame of reference, the way in which I interacted with people. And so when I remember going back in my experiences and recounting when people would say, you're so naive, it's like, no, that's not true. Like, I see the world. No, I was naive because those core beliefs, those core limiting beliefs about the world and others had me just seeing the best in everyone. So I was naive. And that, plus the amount of compassion that I had and empathy and understanding for people and the hard that they're going through, or the lack of capacity that they had to meet my needs. And then over everyone else, like, they didn't have capacity to not steal from that person because they were so overburdened by their circumstances that they didn't have capacity not to cheat on their wives, or they didn't have capacity to provide for their children more than they had capacity to meet their own selfish needs and tendencies. And so reflecting back on that word capacity, I was like, oh my gosh, that's such a true point. And when I think about my clients, and they're to the point that you just mentioned, B, there's moments where they'll be in relationships, right? Intimate experiences, whatever. And they'll have a hand to deal with the prolonged manipulation that's happening because they don't see their partner, their boyfriend, their girlfriend, their whoever, their team member, whatever, accurately, because they have very similar core belief about the world and about others, which makes them naive. That, paired with empathy, paired with understanding, paired with like conscientiousness and compassionate, you just want to believe everyone is good. That tanks your self-worth, because you end up in situations where not only are you being exploited by people who do not have capacity to meet your needs, but on top of that, there's people who will actually gaslight you for having the feeling and the response of, I shouldn't be in this situation right now. So the big mental shift that I came to, and that I want to share with everyone that's listening to this episode, is that ultimately, if you go instead of, no, everyone's a great person, right? You can have that as a core belief. I'm not saying take that away. But the mental shift that was so profound for me and for so many people that I have helped in this journey, if you are especially someone that's a highly sensitive person and empathetic and compassionate and understanding, and you understand that people go through tough times, shift to the assumption that you are being manipulated. And I'm not saying now go and swing that pendulum to everyone is evil, the world is an awful, terrible place. It's just a tiny mental shift. It's like an experiment. Assume that because of someone's lack of capacity, right, their baseline needs not being able to be met, they can't and don't have the ability to extend and meet your needs. Unconsciously shift to assume that you're being manipulated, not because there's malice and not because they want to and that it's conscious, intentional, covert manipulation, but because people do not have capacity not to.
You have to be able to hold the duality in this. We are not saying become cynical and nihilistic of the entire world. What we are saying is hold both beliefs that there are amazing human beings out there in the world who sincerely want to do well. And that when we don't feel like we can get our needs met, we will do things that we wouldn't do if we 100% knew better and if we knew how to self-soothe. We're not saying assume everyone is manipulating you. That's not helpful. That's not adaptive. That is not productive. What we are saying is understand that everyone is doing the things that they need to do to get their needs met. And sometimes that means hurting you to get their needs met. So we're not saying assume everyone's bad. We're saying ask yourself the question, what else could be happening here? How true is this? Is there any is there any unmet need or any ulterior motive that this person might potentially have?
Yeah.
It's
What need
not
of
to
theirs
be,
is unmet, or are they
it's,
trying to meet?
yes, it's not, no, you're fine. It's not to be cynical or to be nihilistic. It's to be real.
Yeah.
You approach the world better that way because you will see that there's amazing people out there, and you will see that there are people who, not out of malice, but because they're unaware, are doing things to get their needs met. You approach the world better when you have a more holistic, realistic mindset than Pollyanna, which is, no, nothing is bad and everyone's amazing and everyone has my best interest at heart. Or the opposite, which is everybody's evil and fuck the world and I'm going to go hide in a cave. Because that's
Yeah.
not helpful either. You
Right.
have to find that adaptive middle ground. And when you are in the middle, you'll have the best quality of life, the best relationships, your needs will be met, and you'll be able to meet the needs of others because you're not being hoodwinked.
Yeah. Whew. Yeah. We've all been there. We've all been there.
Man.
So the the final takeaway from me and episode suggestion, the final takeaway is that it's far more of a capacity issue. Not everyone is always an overflowing cup. Not everyone, very few people actually, as a matter of fact, are an overflowing cup. Very few people have, if you think about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the evolved version of that, very few people have all of their needs met and overwhelmingly met. So where they have extra energy to say, let me go into this interaction with this person. Even though I'm stressed out, I'm under pressure, and I have needs, let me make sure that I don't go near that line of manipulation or unconsciously not disclosing why I'm interacting in this relationship the way in which I am. Let me make sure that I know that the other person on their side has a shared understanding of why I'm interacting with them the way in which they are, and how much they know that I really care about where they're at with their needs. Like very, 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 very few people have the capacity to do that. Not only capacity, but the self-mastery to do that. So that's been something that I've been working on, self-mastering, to knowing exquisitely where my needs are at, how full are my cups at. If I were to gauge 0 to 10 on each level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and know that before I go into relationships, right, and talking with people and whatnot, and have that baseline knowing, that's self-mastery, that's capacity. But not every time that's possible. And so to not think about this, I think, would be a travesty. And hopefully, this has been something that has been eye-opening, but also helpful. And my final episode suggestion on that note is 331. Are you emotionally immature? Because if you're emotionally immature, turns out you are likely covert manipulating everyone around you without even knowing it.
Woof.
B.
390. Why can't I trust myself? There is both darkness and light in this world, and you can't have one without the other, and you can't deny one's existence and only embrace the other. When we see the holistic truth of the world, meaning the good and the bad, and we learn the skills of navigating both of them, that is how you have the most successful, holistic, amazing, fulfilling life possible. All right, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.